Right. So you should have 3 ships, which are movie clips, and in the library we have given them a linkage name. So in this case, I've called my first jet Hawk, one Lapwing, the other one called Starling, and they're on the stage. I've saved them all, or saved this file in its own folder, in this case called Defense Game, and I've made sure that that folder is separate from all the other work that I've done, because I just want in here to have my project file, which is where your graphics are and some of the code is, and then the rest of the code is all going to wind up in separate ActionScript files. So we're working in a slightly different way, but it's more professional. The reason we work in a modular way is so you can reuse things. So like, for example, I could take this ship class and use it in another game. So I've got 3 things on the stage at this point in time. I just need to clear my code out and save that so that I'm in a blank place the same as you are. So I've got 3 things on stage and they're completely blank, apart from the visual graphics. So there's no code attached to them or anything like that. Now, previously, last week and the week before, we've done animation using ActionScript, which might seem a long time ago. So let's just recap. Which event did we use to make things move? Can anyone remember when we were animating things? There was a keyword event. It was all in caps. All right, Rob, describe or try and describe, without the use of specific terminology then, how you think we made things work last week.
Was it like e.target?
Okay, so e.target, which was inside a list of instructions. So when we use e.target, we use that to set the position. And which letter did we use to set the position, or which letters? X and Y. So we set them in the vertical and horizontal axes, okay. And all we did was reposition them every frame, and there was a special word for that, which was all capitals. So every frame, when it started the frame, still no clue. Okay, the keyword was enter frame. Does that start to make any? Yeah. So we built everything last week on 2 events, enter frame, and the other one was clicking, mouse event click. So this week we're using most of the same sort of code, except it's just going to be applied in a slightly different way. So with these ships in your library, what we're going to do first is set up the class files. So if you right click each one of those instances in your library, or clips, you will see edit class. All I want you to do is to click edit class. It'll give you a dialog about, do you want to do it in this program, animate, just click OK, and it will open up a file for you. The file name should be whatever you have called your linkage name. So there's some conventions that have to be met, they're absolute. The file name must be the same as this bit here where it says public class, and it must also be the same as this first function. So in my instance it says Hawk. Now thankfully Animate does this for you. So all you really need to do is Control S and save it in the same folder as your other piece of as your project file. So Control S, find the folder you're working in. So in my case, I'm working in Documents, and then Defense Game. Click Save, and then I want you to do the same for the other 2 or other 1 clip that you've got. So if you've got 3 clips, all your clips need to be done like that. So they need a linkage name first, George. But you haven't given them one in the library. So you see where it says linkage?
Oh, right, yeah. All right.
Convention is always use a capital letter for a class. Okay, so if you've got 3 ships, you should now have 3 class files and a project file all in the same folder. I'll just pause it for a second while you catch up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how a class might be used. So when we added something to the stage last week, and the week before even, we've used something called add child. And we've used quite a few lines of code. And one of the benefits of using a class descriptor is that we can make all of that just happen once. So rather than for every single thing that we put on, we've only got one function that's in one separate file, and then just one line of code every time we create it, with all the parameters in. So what we're going to do, I'm going to use the file hawk as my starting point. So I'm just going to ignore the other 2 for now. And I'll run you through what this means. Okay, so every class file starts with the keyword package, and that's closed by the last curly bracket. By default, Flash will say import Flash display movie clip because we're using a movie clip. We've already created that in graphics, and so we need that. We need access to everything that all the classes that a movie clip has access to. It then says that this extends the movie clip. So whatever we do goes above and beyond what a normal movie clip does. So we're adding properties that are available. We're adding actions that can be done. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a property. Now there's 2 types of property. Ones that you can access readily, which are public, so you can access them from anywhere, and ones that are just accessible within the class. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the ones that are only accessible within the class, and that allows us to build special kinds of functions. So I'm going to use the keyword private and then var. So as this is saying, it's going to be a variable that's private, but essentially it's a property of every instance of hawk in this case. My variable is going to be velocity. I'm going to give it a velocity value. The velocity is going to be an integer. An integer is a whole number. So after a colon, I just type int, press return, and that's going to equal, in this case, 5. So I'm going to start off with my velocity as being 5. We're then going to create a type of function known as a getter. If I want to find out this information, I will call from the main program the get for that movie clip, in this case, or for that class. So underneath public function hawk, I'm going to create another public function, which means it's a function that can be called anywhere once the hawk has been added. Public function is going to be get velocity, brackets, curly brackets, press return. It'll put another one in for you by default. And all I'm going to tell it to do is a thing called return. It just basically says whenever it's called, it'll just send this information back. So I'm going to return velocity. My private property, which is called velocity in this case, I will be able to access, but only when I use the command get velocity. Tell me what the velocity is. There's an opposite to getting, which is another word. What's the opposite of getting something? Sorry? Using. Losing. Good point. That's in a different context. Okay. So if I was getting information about something in a game, like the velocity, what might I do in opposite to that? It's like, what might I want to do with the velocity? I might want to find out what it is, and I might also want to make the ship faster or slower. Come on, simple word.
That's really slow. The opposite of getting.
Well, if I want to find out the velocity, and finding out the velocity is getting the velocity. If you take, it doesn't have to be the right word, but what am I going to do? What are the two actions I'm going to do with velocity? I'm either going to find out what it is, or I'm going to. You're playing the game, you press the accelerator. What happens? Yeah, but what else happens? You go from 0 to. And what is that action? If I am. No, the moving is something you see on screen. What am I doing to the actual velocity? It's just the velocity is just a number. Okay, increasing. I'll take that. That's a good word. It's not quite the word I was looking for. However, changing would have been a little bit better. We're changing the velocity. And the opposite of getting the velocity would be setting the velocity. So, why doesn't it make sense?
The opposite of getting.
Is setting. It is in this context. In the context of life, getting and losing are getting and not having are the binary opposites. But in the context of a game, if you think about it, now that you know that, when I get the velocity, or when I ask the velocity, I get the velocity. When I want to change the velocity, I'm setting it. So that's why it's getters and setters. So I could do a setter, but I'm not going to do that just yet. So I'm going to save that file. When you're working with external ActionScript files, you have to save your changes before you test. So that's slightly different to working in the timeline with your code. So that means you're only really going to make clear revisions, then save, then test. Okay. So what I'm going to do in my main project file is I'm going to delete everything off the stage. I want a blank stage, and then I want to put some actions onto the timeline. So F9. And similar to how we've done before, I am going to create, so that, new hawk, in my case, which is going to be of type hawk. Now, if you've done this correctly, with my drop-down guidance, I am now getting a class called hawk. So because of the way we're working, the code hinting is adjusting itself to work with what we are doing. It's picking up the class files and it's adding them to its code base. So I press return and it gives me hawk, which equals new, and then again, hawk is the top of that list. So it's going to make my life easier working in this way. Now in brackets, currently, there is nothing to set. But when I create that, eventually there's going to be values to add. So then I'm just going to add child, new hawk. This should be somewhat familiar because you've done it before. But bear in mind, I'm using new hawk and you're using one of your names, yeah? Yeah. This is the benefit of having short names, really. When I test that, I should see it, depending on where your registration point is, in the top left corner. So I'm just going to test that to make sure that works. And I can just see the bottom of my ship at the moment. I can set the position, as we've done before, using this syntax. newhawk.x equals and newhawk.y equals. So now it's somewhere in the screen and I can see it. So that's the way we were working last week and the week before. I'm also going to add one other line, and that is newhawk dot, and then I'm going to get velocity, which is also in the drop-down list. Because I've set that function within a class file, now I got all this code in it. So I shouldn't have any problems naming, remembering names for things, because everything I create comes up there. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say var vel int equals. just because I want to set it into a variable so I can test it. I wouldn't normally be doing this very much. Trace vel. There we go. Now pay attention to this bit here. I've put word wrap onto my code. So this is on line 5. And you can tell that because there's a big gap between 5 and 6. Because I've got less space on the screen than you have working at the stupid site. Eventually, you don't need to drop that line. But actually, there's nothing on that line. It's line 6 needs to go. The same thing. I was just mentioning about word wrap. Okay, look at line 5, and then it drops down, but that's actually still line 5. So you've got, and you can fit everything on so people can read it. Unfortunately, I just have the word wrap. Okay, you got that. You got that. So do you want to test that and see how it works for you? New enemy 1. Okay. Close the start scouting code and see what the problem is. Now, because you call it new enemy 3 there. So if we test it again. Good, there it is. And there's your velocity just being out the output.
Yeah.
If get velocity doesn't exist, then that will be talking in new enemy 3 doesn't have anything. New enemy 1's where he's done it. So otherwise we can just enemy 1 preference. Yeah, so instead of it being enemy 3, enemy 1, new enemy 1. Oh, yes. Or he created was separate classes.
Yeah, I like the original.
Did it work? Oh. Oh. just like this, you have to tell every variable what's going to be in that variable. So unfortunately, you don't say, well, what this is going to hold. When you do that, you say, like, what's the create? And this may be then there is 3 down there in the output is 5, which we know is the velocity that we set. Okay.
I'm still getting the same.
Pretty much in a place where we can move forwards. Just knock that bit dark. One, two. Okay. So currently I've got it appearing on screen as required, and you should have also got a number coming out here saying what the velocity is. So now I'm going to go back into the Hawk file first. I'm going to change the way that things work a little bit. Okay, so you'll see somewhere inside your code where it says // constructor code. Okay, so constructor, that means when you create or add a new instance of this class to the stage, you are constructing it. So this is what happens when you very first add it to the stage. So currently, nothing there. It just basically chucks on whatever graphic is linked to it, to the stage. But what I'd like to do is to create a much more kind of eloquent way of creating it. So by setting properties. So in between these brackets, what I can do is I can set what are known as parameters. So when you create a function and there's things that are required by that function to perform what it's supposed to perform, they're known as parameters. So we've used parameters before for events when we've been listening for a specific type of event. The 2 events we've been working with are... No, last week, what events did we work with? We had a big discussion about it. It lasted about 10 minutes. I'll give you a clue. One of them starts with E. No, not that one. It's not an event, by the way. That's just, well, enter frame. So the enter frame event, and we also use click, which is a mouse event. So in this case, what I'm going to put in is start X. Now this can get quite long-winded because I'm going to use meaningful names. I would usually try and keep it as short as possible. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to change it to _X, if that's okay, rather than having long-winded names. So _X, colon, and then I'm going to tell it that that is an integer. Then a comma, _Y, integer. Yeah. So we're setting a load of different parameters. And I'm also going to set one called scale, which is going to be a number. So use the code in it to help you. The drop-down menu. Oh, right. Spot the not so deliberate mistake. Everything that I've just put in that in those 2 brackets needs to go in the constructor code, and I wasn't really paying attention to where I was putting it. So take it from get velocity and put it in your main constructor. So mine's called Hawk, yours is called something else. That's where it needs to be. It doesn't need to be where I just put it. Yeah. Once you've done that, is that been done? Some kind of confirmation? Right, okay. So then what I'm going to say is this dot x equals underscore x. This dot y equals and then I'm going to say this dot scale x equals this dot scale y equals scale. That's a shorthand way of setting two variables to the same value at the same time. So it saves you a few characters. Like I said before, coding is very much about saving time and space. It's known as optimizing. I'm sure you can understand that the shorter the code is physically, the more optimal the game will run. Okay, it's a minor saving in this game, but when you're working on bigger games, it's a big difference. Once you've got to that point, you then need to save that file and go back into your project file. So I'm just going to save that and then go back to my project file. And in the code section, what I'm going to do is, okay, the x and the y that I was going to set previously with these lines here, I'm now going to change. So that's just going to be 600, comma, 500, comma, and then I'm going to put 0.4. I can get rid of all these other lines. And I'm going to save this as version 2. I'm hoping that when I test it, I'll still have the ship on screen, and that will have changed the scale of it to something a bit more kind of like appropriate for the size of screen, because it was massive before.